Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's Ray Hennessy along with Scott Keys, and today our guest is Santosh Shanmuga. Tonight, we're going to be discussing creating and executing a plan to capture unique wildlife photos. So, the goal tonight is to give you some ideas and suggestions for you to think about when planning your next outing. So, we really want you to think beyond just going out and wandering around and seeing what you might find and turning that into us. We're going to discuss some different ways how each of us kind of go about planning and executing a shoot. So instead of just wandering around, we're going to really put in some thought and planning into that. So Scott, okay. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so a couple pointers for the talk. As usual, we encourage a lot of comments and a lot of questions. The one great thing is we'll be sharing a lot of images tonight. Hopefully new stuff. Santosh hasn't shared a lot of work publicly with the Facebook Live group, so we'll get some new images from him. And we did want to make a couple of announcements. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is we're trying to migrate off of Facebook and over to YouTube. It's going to take a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. We're trying to get a lot of subscribers over there so that we can more easily facilitate the live talks. Ray's dropping in a link to the YouTube channel, and I see it in the comments now. So you can click on that and subscribe, and that will help us when we get enough followers. We'll probably make some announcements and we'll migrate over there. So with that being said, a lot of comments tonight. We look forward to interaction, and we'll introduce Santosh now. I'll give Santosh a couple minutes to talk about himself. But before he does, I did want to let everybody know a couple things that Santosh, because he's so humble, might not mention. Santosh was a finalist in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year last year, probably the most prestigious wildlife photography contest in the world. So really a great honor to be associated with him. And he also was a finalist, or I'm not exactly sure of the placement, but we'll say he placed in the Underwater Photographer of the Year contest, and he can elaborate on that if I messed it up. So Santosh, welcome aboard, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me, and thanks for the awesome intro, Scott. So yeah, so my name's Santosh. I started shooting maybe about I've been on this live stream once before, yeah, probably a couple months ago, but I started shooting maybe about 4 years ago, and I got serious like probably 3 years ago. And then I started off shooting mostly reptiles and amphibians, and then got into birds after that, and then finally into underwater photography. And so I shoot a little bit of everything, some landscapes here and there, but mostly anything that's live, so any animal. But yeah, thanks, Scott. So I placed in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year last year, and was a finalist also in Underwater Photographer Year. So those were both pretty unexpected and pretty awesome.
Yeah, congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about planning a wildlife outing. And I think like one of the big turning points in my wildlife photography, like I guess growth as a wildlife photographer was changing from just going out, to the park with my camera and just shooting whatever I saw, to actually, thinking about what I wanted to photograph and making a plan and going out and achieving that. So I think when I started doing that, I started seeing, the quality of my images like greatly increase. And then, I started getting more people commenting on them and more people like actually taking notice. And I think that's when I personally started finding more like gratification in like the images I was producing.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, man.
Yeah. So we'll start off here with an image I have of American avocet, which is absolutely my favorite bird in the entire world. And
I remember when you took this.
Yeah, so this was down in South Texas. So it's I was all the way down all the way down in Brownsville, the southernmost tip, on the Rio Grande, as far south in Texas as you can get before actually being in Mexico. I was actually staying at my buddy's house, which is actually on the Mexican side of the border wall. So that's pretty interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He was like a hop, skip, and a throw away from the Rio Grande, and you could see Mexico from his balcony actually.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's pretty cool. I stayed there for I was down in Texas for work, and I went down there for 2 weekends and stayed in this guest bedroom. It was pretty nice. So this is at a place called Esteriano Preserve, probably west, about 20 minutes west of Brownsville. and it's a pretty well-known wetlands area. You know, they have a lot of like of the classic South Texas waterfowl, so like teal, especially cinnamon teal, whistling ducks.
Nice.
It's actually a famous place to get like Mexican paraques, I think that's how you pronounce it. I know Josh would know, but that's a pretty good spot that birders like to go and get those guys. So I knew that there were avocets and stilts there.
What time of year was this?
This was in April.
Okay.
Yeah, and I knew they were. My buddy told me, you know, it's a great place to get low and shoot. He said that it is muddy, and he said that there were ants, which I'll explain more about later, which I didn't really, you know, consider. I thought he was just joking.
Yeah.
But he said it's a great place to get low and shoot, and you know, everyone knows Ray loves shooting backlit photos.
Yeah.
And, ever since I started shooting with Ray, you know, years ago, like 3 years ago, I've gotten more into shooting backlit myself. So I wanted to get a shot where combining, you know, some of the things that I've seen from Ray, where, you know, you get a backlit image, as well as stuff I've seen from some of my favorite European photographers, where, you know, they shoot in a vertical composition and they have an interesting foreground instead of an interesting background. So, you know, I kind of had an image that looked something like this in my mind.
And that's the key right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to go out and get that. So I went out there, and you know, a lot of times I shoot with the teleconverter just because I wanted to get, you know, as close to the bird as possible, you know, reach is key. But this time I went out without a teleconverter because I knew if I wanted to get interesting bokeh in the foreground, I needed to shoot wide open. So I didn't even bother to bring that along.
Nice.
And then I got out there, you know, several hours before sunset, and I kind of looked and scouted for where the avocets were feeding, and I looked to see where the sun would be setting, and then I kind of positioned myself in the reeds there. And so this, instead of, usually in the past I would have like walked around the pond, and, you know, if I saw something interesting, I'd have tried to get down and shoot it. You know, if it was a bird feeding, and I would have shot the animal, you know, for like 10 minutes and then moved on. But, you know, this time I actually set up a couple hours before sunset, and I just kind of sat there and waited. And it was pretty miserable, to say the least, because at this place in pretty much all of Texas, there's a species of ant called the crazy ant. It's an invasive, it's a non-native species from Brazil. It's not a fire ant, so it doesn't like, they don't sting, and it's not like extremely painful, but they're called crazy ants because they do not stop moving, and they just crawl on everything.
Are they just quick? So, yeah.
They're quick, and then they go everywhere. So, like, as soon as I lay down, I noticed I see these little ants crawling all over my, like, forearm, and then they went, you know, in my shirt, in my back.
I remember you sent a video, and we were like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, like, I literally probably had 1,000 ants on me. Good thing they don't bite. Like,
yeah.
Every once in a while, I would get bit, but it's more annoying than anything.
Yeah.
And the bites weren't super painful, but, you know, sitting there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours with these ants crawling over me, trying not to go crazy because they'd be crawling like in my eye and up my nose.
Nice.
That was like a testament to how much I wanted this image.
Yeah.
So, you know, I waited out there, and you know, I took some test images, and, you know, this is something I never really thought of in the past, but I noticed that when I was shooting through reeds, I would get like the shape of the reeds in the foreground bokeh.
That's really cool.
So I positioned myself to make sure that when I shot, I would have some reeds actually right in front of my element, like actually leaning on front of my lens hood, and I got these interesting shapes in the foreground bokeh. And then, you know, I just waited for the sun to get into the golden hour, and then waited for some of the avocets to like strike an interesting pose, and I shot away. But I mean, if I didn't have an image in mind that I wanted to get, and I didn't really think about like how I was going to get it and set up and, you know, take the time to prepare and plan, I wouldn't have got this image, which is probably my favorite photo I've taken in 2017.
Yeah, exactly. So the odds that you would happen to get lucky enough to walk by this spot and get down that low and be in the right direction for the light when that bird comes by, when you're just randomly walking around, are next to zero. But when you put in that time and effort and planning, you know, your odds are severely increased. And there was every chance you weren't, you know, you may have not gotten the shot, but with your planning and time spent there, you know, thankfully you did.
Exactly. And anyone that's shot like stilts and avocets know that when they're feeding, they don't stay still. So they're like constantly moving back and forth. And there was a little sliver, right next to where the sun, I wasn't shooting directly into the sun, but maybe 5 degrees to the right
Yeah,
of
that's
where
good.
the majority of the glare would be, because anymore I would lose a lot of that backlighting and that
Yeah,
golden light, and then closer towards the sun, I would just be getting this massive amount of glare. So
sure.
I had to wait for a bird to come in that correct area, and I actually pointed my lens in the direction and just sat there and waited, even though there was birds feeding all around me that
Nice.
could have been
Yeah.
happening.
Really
That's great.
interesting. Yeah, super.
You also mentioned a point that, so this was, when you took this photo, this was your first time visiting this location, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but, I like what you mentioned, that you showed up many hours before sunset, so you could scout around a little bit and spend some time actually watching and finding an area where maybe they're more concentrated or feeding a little bit more than other areas. So,
Yep.
in addition to the planning of the location, and you kind of had a vision of the shot in mind, you didn't just show up, 5 minutes before when it would be good light to take that photo. You showed up many hours before to actually put in some of that scouting, so
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
even when you're in
Especially
a location,
since I've never been there before.
yeah, and that's my point. Even when you're in a location that you've maybe traveled to or you've never been to before, showing up early and even doing some same day scouting can certainly pay off. It's not like you have to visit a location 15 times to make it work out like that. So
Yep.
yeah, that's great. What you got an image you want to hit next?
Yeah. So let me see. 1 second.
Yeah.
We can.
This was from that outing, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was from that outing.
Yeah.
I was kind of laying in mud, and I mean, you can't see now, and it's hard to appreciate it. But I remember when I sent you the video, that guy said there was ants crawling all over.
I do remember seeing that. Yeah. It did not look
Yeah,
particularly fun.
Yeah. So maybe we can do the. I have a photo of a snake that's kind of hanging out on a rock cliff.
Oh yeah, this.
Yeah, that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So this photo is also from South Texas. This is actually, this is actually more West Texas, but this is there's a city called Del Rio, again on the Rio Grande, about 3 hours west of San Antonio, and this is about an hour further west from there.
Yeah.
So it's a popular place for herpers, which are people that go and the people that enjoy looking for reptiles and amphibians. It's a popular place in Southwest Texas to go and look for these for certain snakes, including this snake, which is a subocularis, or a bug-eyed cat snake.
Nice.
Or a bug-eyed rat snake, not a cat snake.
Okay.
Or like a alternative, which is called a gray banded kingsnake, which is a pretty famous snake that a lot of people keep as pets, and they're also extremely beautiful.
Yeah. They really are.
So there's highways that cut through this area, and they kind of cut through these limestone cliffs, and then the snakes, come out under the cover of night when it's not 100 degrees outside, and they come and hunt for lizards along these cliffs. And what you do is you actually park your car and you just walk along these cliffs, and you shine your flashlight looking for the snakes kind of crawling on these vertical rock faces as they hunt. So I wanted to get a photo kind of encapsulating that, because people travel. Surprisingly, people travel all over the U.S. to come to this location to look for these snakes.
Nice.
It's not very, herping is not very mainstream, but a lot of people do it. And then, this area especially is pretty famous across the U.S. as a place where, people come and look for snakes. There's actually a big snake festival in Sanderson, Texas every fall, and people come here just for this reason.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of wanted to get a photo that encapsulate that aspect of shining these limestone cliffs and finding a snake. So it took I of course had to find a snake, and when I did, I kind of got it to sit still and hang out, and then I had this picture in mind. So I usually when I shoot snakes, I shoot with the macro, but this was shot with a 14 to 24 millimeter.
Oh, nice.
And I set it up on a tripod, and I took 2 images because I wanted to get both the snake in focus and the Milky Way in the background. So I took one image where I focused on the snake, and I did a long exposure, and I just hit it with the beam of my flashlight to kind of give it that spotlight effect.
Yeah.
And then I took a second image where I focused on the Milky Way, and I did a 30-second exposure, blah,
Nice.
blah, blah, exposed for the Milky Way, and then I combined them and um, in post.
Yeah,
So,
perfect.
it's not a single image, but it's definitely a composite. But I think it's a pretty realistic composite of what actually you would experience and see. Doing this, looking for snakes down in Sanderson, Texas.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. It definitely gives you the idea of what it would be like standing there. Can I ask, what's this? Is that just city light, like light pollution?
So that's actually a 18-wheeler that's rounding the bend. So it's crazy. So these highways down there are like the only ways to access like some of these cities, like Alpine, Texas, and Del Rio. And 18-wheelers, if anyone's been to Texas, they know that speed limits are like 80 there, and then everyone ends up going like 90. So these 18-wheelers come barreling down, going like 85, 90 miles per hour. And there's all you have between yourself and between like the rock wall and the highway is like a shoulder that's like 5 feet wide. So you'd be just out there shining, and you'd have these 18-wheelers blow by you, and the draft from these trucks as they blow by you would almost knock you off your feet sometimes.
And that's where these snakes live and hunt at night, huh?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yep.
So
so it's actually like a law that when you are out there shining for snakes, you had to wear like a highly reflective vest to like prevent yourself from being hit.
Yeah. Nice. Hazards of the shot.
Really cool.
Yeah, very cool. I'm gonna switch over to talking about a shot I planned, and then we'll maybe hit these wide angle, more scenic shots of yours. So this is a shot that I've been thinking about for years. So this is a little bit extreme on the planning side.
I just want to mention Ray talked about this for like 3 weeks.
I did.
Like he literally talked about, I'm going out, I know exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
And he kept talking about it over. He was like literally obsessed with this for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I really had become that way. And it had been something that had been on and off in my brain for literally probably 3 years since I had first seen downy woodpeckers feeding on the phragmite reeds, and they peck away at them and actually pull insects and different things out of the center of these reeds in the winter. So it's actually really common behavior to see these downy woodpeckers. And I'll just jump ahead real quick just so you have an idea, but this is like the shot I had in mind. So this is what I had envisioned in my head, which was a downy woodpecker perched on a single reed, and that was the only thing in focus. So I had an idea of where to find them, and it was actually at John Hines National Wildlife Refuge in Philly. I knew I could easily find them there. So when I finally got the right weather and timing and had some free time to go do that, I made my first outing there, and I found one, and this was from my first outing. So it started this way, and this is where I'm just kind of working my way through the shot and trying to come up with it. So I had a vision in my head of what I wanted to shoot, and I started trying to shoot it. And some of these shots came out okay. You can see I kind of got just that one thing in focus, but there's some distractions here, and it's not exactly what I was looking for. But you can start to see the formation of the shot as I was going through this. And the whole time, I'm shooting this, I had this plan in mind, and I knew where I wanted to go and kind of the lighting I wanted and how I wanted to shoot it, as far as I wanted the bird to be pretty small in the frame. So I didn't want to get real close to it. And that actually makes it a lot more challenging because you have a lot more stuff to shoot through. So to get a clear view of the bird when it's small through these thick frag fields is really tough. And then to get it in focus and to get it to position itself in the right spot, it definitely took a lot of time. So my first outing, I probably spent, 2.5 hours shooting a couple of these downy woodpeckers, never coming up with the exact shot that I wanted. This was from the second outing. I went probably 2 or 3 days later again because I wasn't real happy with the first outing. And I started getting, again, a little bit closer to the shot, but I just kept working it. And that's something I also want to mention. Sometimes if you have a plan in mind and a vision for a shot, and you put a lot of work in, and you scout, and you go, and it doesn't happen, the best thing you can do is not give up and just try and go back and really work hard to get that shot, especially if you think it's going to be something unique and special.
You don't want to sell yourself short, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. It's really easy to go one time, have a tough outing, either not see your target or just not even come close to getting the shot of the target that you had in mind. That happens to me countless times. But, to really make those shots come to fruition, it takes, commitment and going out again and again. So here I'm pretty close to what I wanted, and then I finally nailed it. I finally got just that one downy, or that one read in focus, and I was shooting through a bunch of other reads, which is what also helped to make everything else completely out of focus. And then I was able to actually create a couple of different images that I really liked. And this one had a little pop of sun, which was nice. And then my favorite of the set was this one that actually kind of showed the top of the Phragmites reeds there, and just gave a really interesting feel and vibe to the photo. So, this
I
was
love that transition of the color and the bird like looking up the
Thank you.
stock.
Yeah, and they almost never hold still on these things either. Every once in a while, when they really do find an insect and are working it to get it out of there, they'll peck in one spot for a minute or two, so you actually have some time to move around and make a composition. But a lot of the times they're just kind of bouncing from one stick to another, and you're just kind of running around like a madman. And I want to mention also, I think what helped me make this image possible was how I shoot, and that's from a monopod. I think if I had used a tripod for something like this, I don't know that I ever would have gotten the shot, or it would have taken me at least twice as long, because there were so many times I had to move. Sometimes it was literally 3 inches to the left, or 5 inches to the right and 2 inches down to see through all the reeds that I was trying to shoot through and get the bird in just the right spot. So to make those adjustments on a tripod would have been, near impossible to do quick enough before the bird moved on. But shooting on a monopod let me just be a lot more flexible with my movements and, getting where I needed to be to get that shot. So, having the right equipment with me also helped to make this shot happen.
Yeah, definitely. And like going back to equipment, like I know this is a little out of order that
that's fine.
Wanted to do, but like if you want to go to the Harlequin shot.
Yeah, let's hit it.
Yeah, so like speaking of equipment, like it's important, when you have so I think like the first step to this is, kind of envisioning what kind of shot you want to get. And I think, that's far and beyond like the most important step, like what's your subject, like how do you want what do you want your image to look like? So like, you want to envision in your mind, how the image is going to look, and and try and replicate what you see in your mind, because otherwise you're just going to kind of be going out there and shooting blind. And I find that when I go out and just shoot blind, I don't really get images that like strike me, that make me like, oh man, I really nailed it. But when I think of an image that I want to get in my mind, and I go out and I try and do that, that's when I nail these images that are that I really like remember and really and see people seem to like.
Yeah.
So this is a photo of Harlequin ducks from Barnegat Inlet. Many people have shot there. Pretty famous location. And these birds are nest and breed in like class 3, class 4, class 5 level rapids, like out in western U.S. and in Canada. So I kind of wanted, and that's the reason why they hang out in some of these inlets, is because they
fast
like
moving water. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to get an image because so a buddy of mine photographed tern ducks down in Ecuador, and he got an image of tern ducks sitting on a rock with the rapids flowing all around them several years ago. And I really remembered, wow, that's a pretty awesome image, because it combines like birds with the more like it showcases their environment, and also uses some different techniques like slow shutter speed, which people don't usually use with birds. So I wanted to do that with harlequins. And like the friends that I shoot with know that when I go to Barnegat, I usually go there and handhold my 500, because I find it's much more manageable and like maneuverable to handhold it there than like lugging out a tripod and shooting from that.
Yeah.
But for shooting, and this image that I had in my mind where some harlequins are sitting on a rock with water flowing around them and showing like the movement of the water, I definitely needed a tripod. Joe, I think this image was shot at like 1/6 of a second.
Yeah, it says that 1/13 is the metadata I'm looking at.
Yeah,
right here.
1/13.
At f/22, ISO 100 at 500 millimeter.
Yeah. So I remember like this day I actually lugged out my tripod, and I kind of found the rocks where the harlequins were hanging out, and usually I try and get a little closer and shoot a little lower, but to showcase the water, I just kind of set up my tripod. And I actually brought my shutter release as well, and I hooked it up to my camera so I wouldn't get like any shutter shake when I pressed on the button. I would just use the shutter release instead, the cable release. And then I kind of sat there and waited for the Harlequins to actually sit still long enough to get a clear image, which surprisingly was hard because they kept moving.
They do move a lot. They're very active
I kept
together.
getting like blurry heads and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I kind of sat there and I got a little lucky and I got some cloud cover too. So I was able to bring my shutter speed down a little bit more to showcase the water movement even more.
Which is key,
yeah. So that's something, bringing out equipment that I typically don't use in the field. I rarely use a tripod, and I even more rarely use a shutter release for wildlife. I mostly use it for my landscape. So
that's a great example.
So, thinking about the gear that you need and bringing it out there will help you, get the image you have in mind.
No, that's a perfect example of that. Yeah, and great execution of it too. Nice shot, man.
Thank you.
Let's hear about this turtle.
Oh yeah, so this is a green sea turtle from the one of the black sand beaches on the eastern shore of the Big Island of Hawaii. So this is kind of like thinking. I had an image where I saw a similar photo, but it had no turtle, and it was just kind of like your typical landscape image with the waves crashing upon some rocks. And I thought to myself, how cool would that be if those rocks were replaced by an animal like a green sea turtle?
Yeah.
And in Hawaii, these sea turtles actually come up on the beach and they bask and they, take a nap. Quite often, you can see a lot of these turtles out on the beaches out there. So I was like, I'm gonna take a landscape photo, but with an animal in it. So I went out there with, again with my 14 to 24 and a graduated ND filter, which again I rarely use for wildlife.
Nice.
I think this is the first time I ever used that for a wildlife shot, and shutter release and a tripod. And then more importantly, I because I've never been to this location before, and I was only on the Big Island for 3 days. I was staying in Oahu, but I was on the Big Island for like over Thanksgiving break, Thanksgiving weekend. So I was only there for 3 days, and I only had a morning here, so I wanted to make sure I get my composition right. So I used a app called Photo Pills, which I think is a pretty cool app. You had to pay for it. I think it's like $10 on the App Store, but I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It does a great
Unless
job
you're
of
Scott.
helping you plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't pay for any apps. If it ain't free, it ain't for me.
So Photo Pills is like a app it's made for landscape photographers mostly, but I think it's good. It's good for even wildlife photographers because it helps show you where into the foreseeable future. You can help you plan out sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, your sun angles, when golden hour is, when blue hour is, when the light's going to be like orange, yellow, blue, purple, pink, whatever. It has a cool virtual reality feature. So like if you're in the location, you can actually turn on the virtual reality feature and it'll turn on your camera and you look through your camera and it'll actually show where the sun's going to rise, where the Milky Way is going to rise, where it's going to set, 4 hours from now, what the angle of the sun is going to be, what the color of the light will be. It's pretty cool. So
nice. I just dropped a link to it in the comments.
Yeah. So never being to this location before and only having one morning there to get this shot, the night before because it's a pretty big beach and I wanted to make sure like right at sunrise I was in the right spot with the right composition. So the evening before, when it was after sunset, I made it out to this beach and I kind of walked on the beach. We had a good moon. We had some moonlight, so I was able to see around, and I turned on the virtual reality feature of this app, and I kind of walked around and looked for the right place where I would get a composition with, interesting foreground, interesting background, and then with light where the light was, coming into the camera. I like shooting into the light a lot. So I found an area that I thought would be great, but with animals, they're never always in the right area. So I was set up in the right location, but the next morning when the turtles came up to the beach, none of them crawled up to where I wanted them to. But I did have one turtle, 3 feet to my left, so I was able to move over a little bit and shoot him. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the sun in the image like I imagined it to, but I was able to get this image, which I was so pretty proud of. And if I had more days, I would have gone back out there and kept trying for an image where the sun would have actually been in the exposure
Yeah,
itself.
it's still really cool, and I want to. That looks like water splashing back there, like
Yeah,
over the
it's a
rocks
big
because
wave crashing over the rocky point.
yeah,
And I
it's like
wanted to
over
include
a
that.
1 second exposure, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to include that point, and I didn't want to cut it off. So again, I didn't want to shoot too far to the left or like angle too far to the right as well.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
And Pete, yeah, that's from the Big Island. It's one of the black sand beaches. I think it's the next one north of Pulalu. I believe. I forget. It's been a couple years.
And real quick before we hit your next landscape image, I just want to jump back. I did have a question on these shots that I was doing earlier, and I just wanted to answer that. Someone asked if I was shooting wide open at what aperture, or if I was using a teleconverter. And yeah, I was shooting at f4 on this on the 500 millimeter, which is as wide open as it goes. And I did not use a teleconverter because I was trying to shoot more scenic, so I didn't really want to get particularly close. And shooting wide open definitely helped me to get that real shallow depth of field and blur everything else out. So that was definitely a part of it. So on to
yeah,
this.
and we are going to do a show about gear.
Yes,
I
we
think
will.
it's on the calendar already.
Yeah. Yes.
So we'll have a lot of questions about that kind of stuff coming up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So here's a landscape shot that I used the same app PhotoPills for. This was on the western side of Oahu, and again, I came out here and was able to find a good location. And unfortunately, I had like really thick cloud cover, and I was actually, the cloud cover was so thick that the sun wasn't able to come through. And I was actually, I was like, screw this, man. Like, this sucks. Like, the sun's gone. Like, so I actually had packed in my gear, and I was humping it back to the truck. And I was like all the way back in the truck, when I looked around and I saw, a sliver of open sky just on the horizon. And like right before my eyes, the sun started peeking from below this thick bank of clouds. And then the most gorgeous, like golden light just like shone right in my face. And I was like, crap, I need to. So I like ran back down there with just my tripod, my camera, and my shutter release, and I like ran. I like was rock.
That's hilarious.
Hopping, I ran down there. I literally had time to take maybe like five of these long exposures before the sun like completely like dipped below the horizon and was gone forever. so another thing, you making sure like you
wait it out.
Plan your shot and wait it out. Don't. There's always a chance that, something amazing will happen like it did here. And this was the image I had in mind. I wanted to get, waves crashing over some of these unique rock formations in the foreground with the sun in the background. So again, having an image in mind and going out to capture that, I think will greatly increase your success in both wildlife and landscape and whatever sort of photography you want to do. Even like if you're a portrait photographer, like, having an idea in mind of what you want to shoot,
for sure,
rather than going out there and just I'll shoot whatever I want. I see it, and if it looks good, it looks good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I think having images in mind and preparing for that will improve your success rate.
And a couple things I want to point out too. You just brought up some great points I want to just elaborate on. It's way too easy to get quickly upset and shut down when things don't work out. But if you just stick with like that, it's so easy to have that and know that you're not alone. It happens all the time to all of us, especially with wildlife. There's countless trips I go out and I plan something and I'm like all excited and I go and it just does not happen. But then, the third, the fourth, sometimes the 10th time I go and try, well, probably not 10. I usually don't try that many, but after you try a few times and then when you get that image, it really feels good to persist and really get through. So, just know that you're not alone and sticking with it can definitely help out. And secondly, I also wanted to mention, actually, I totally forgot my second point. So, Scott, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about planning a little bit with weather. So let's hop over to your screen here. And there you go. Take it away, Scott.
Yeah, so one of the things that, and actually this conversation wasn't part of the original chat that we had planned, but somebody messaged me the other day and they had made a comment about, I got out here and I wanted to do this and it's snowing. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
And they were like disappointed. And I'm like, what do you mean you're disappointed? You're going to go out and shoot grebes with snow? I said, get your ass out there. So
For sure.
so he went out and he actually got some nice pictures. I don't know if he's on, if Ray G. It was actually Ray.
Oh
We call
yeah,
him
yeah,
Ray,
it was yeah.
yeah. So it kind of led me to think about this whole concept of weather and how sometimes we can utilize it. I don't always have weather as a plan A, but I often have it as a plan B. So this is a picture up on the screen now. I don't know if you'll be able to see the raindrops, but it was light rain
Yeah, I think you
that
can.
morning. These dick sisal are pretty rare in this area. And locally, we only get 1 or 2 areas that have them. And they've been coming back for the last 2 or 3 years to this one field. And they've become popular with birders. So locally, I see a lot of pictures of the dick sisal being shared every day. And so it wasn't something I was inclined to go and just take another picture of that looked the same as a lot of other kind of documentation birder pictures or portraits. So I had this on my mind that the next rainy day, because I really did want to photograph them. We don't get a lot of opportunity with them. I was going to take an opportunity out in the rain. So this kind of shows you that you can do a lot with the elements and still have a great morning and still produce some really interesting and oftentimes unique and different images. So this was a dick sisal in the rain that I ended up really liking. I got a couple from this day, different. I got some portraits they were just soaking wet. And then I got this one on a stalk, and you could see all the water on the
Hands
blades.
down, one of my
This was
favorite
another one that I
images of
shot
yours,
with the guys. So Kurum and Mark and I were out, and we were hoping for snow. And we found the snowy owl up on the dunes. We had some cover to shoot from. So we were totally just out there alone with this bird, and then the snow starts, and it was really exciting. So kind of having a plan around what you're going to do and how to maximize the weather. And then this was another day where we were kind of on the fence if we were going to shoot. We weren't sure what the weather was going to be like. Got really excited when we heard about a forecast of snow and decided to go down anyway. I shot this with Ray. I think we were the only 2 there, Ray, right?
Yes, we were.
Yeah, and this is probably the most popular wood duck location on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So to be the only 2 photographers, it was just great. And I knew that if it snowed, we might be the only 2 down there. And it was really nice just to have the opportunity to shoot that all alone. And then another kind of atmospheric condition, and you don't always get an opportunity to plan for it, but something definitely to maximize is when you see these foggy conditions in the morning, right around sunrise, when that atmosphere is changing, you'll get mist coming off water or fog that's low to the water. So I have a couple images that I just wanted to share that can show you how to maximize that. Don't give up on it. When you see those conditions, you can still produce really interesting images. These are hooded mergansers. And I just love the whole. I actually converted this to a black and white, which looked pretty nice because of the color palette.
Yeah.
Here is nice and a lot of monochromatic things happening on these birds, but just having that pure white silky background and
Which
some
came
colorful
from fog, right?
or some monochromatic birds on it. Yeah, that did really well. And then this was another one where this mist and fog was coming off the river. This is a spot, again, when you talk about most photographed places in the East Coast, Conowingo is #1 on the list. So to get a different or unique shot there takes a little bit of planning. So when we saw, first of all, we planned around time of year, so you can see the colors in the trees in the background. So that was kind of part one. We knew we were only going to make one trip down there, so we went to time it with to try to get some color on the trees. And then the second part was just when we saw that mist is kind of where do you want to position yourself. At Conowingo, you can shoot from the fence up top. You can shoot from the rocks down low. Either of those angles doesn't give you the same picture as what you got here. So we were halfway up, and the bird grabs a fish, comes right on top of the fog, and we still get a little bit of the color from the background. So just a couple thoughts around weather and utilizing the seasonality, but also just the day. And having a plan that, hey, if it rains, if it snows, if there's, atmosphere, what can I do with it? So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Back to you, Ray.
Yeah. Some of those things you mentioned with the weather, the longer you shoot, the more I think most people yearn for something different and unique. And as soon as you hear the weather is going to be not the normal standard, just plain overcast or sunny day, that's immediately a sign that, hey, I can make something unique, so when you can plan for and get out in snowy days, rainy days, and when most people are going to just stay home, you have the chance of making those unique images. Just like, especially that, I love that shot of yours in the rain, Scott. That dick sizzle is just incredible.
Thanks.
So, quick, I want to hit this shot. Here's a northern harrier flying. This was a shot I had in mind. This was one I took this year, and then Santosh is going to show you one we tried that he captured, but I was trying the same thing the previous year. So this is a continuation of an idea that I have been doing for a couple years now. And it's just, this is specifically what I want. I wanted this backlit harrier flying against the golden grass. To really show you what I want, I really want to create this image right here. I'd love to get that position with that lighting. So I haven't been able to do that yet, but I was able to create these two separate images this year. But this is the vision I have in my mind. I want it hovering, facing directly towards me, but backlit, so I get the golden glow around it. So I've still yet to do it, but next year I'll be out there trying again. And Tosh, you were able to make a similar one the previous year.
Yeah, so this is the previous year, and like this is like Ray said, this is a continuation. This is something that we want, an image we wanted to get, and Ray's been at it for a couple years now. So again, having an image in mind and going out and being persistent about getting that image, I think it's super gratifying once you get that image and you feel really accomplished and proud of yourself. And I think it also helps you with like becoming a better photographer. But yeah, so having an image in mind, in this case, a backlit harrier flying amongst backlit grass, everything kind of golden in color.
Yeah.
It was a hard shot to get, because harriers can be difficult sometimes, and they were being difficult this day. And we geared up appropriately. We had like thrower blinds, and we were wearing full camo, and you were being super sneaky, and they were still would fly like near us and then be like, oh wait, that's something's wrong here, and then they would fly away.
Yeah.
So we really had to work for hour, and we had to play with angles and trying to get in better positions. And here's a photo of Ray that I took, and we were decked out in camo head to toe, and we were actually we were trying to be super stealthy, and it's still hard.
All
But
right.
persistence pays off.
You got to tell us about this one, Santosh.
Oh yeah. So this is a photo at Oakley Street in Choptank, in the Choptank River, Maryland. Famous waterfowl.
Another
location.
popular
Do I
spot.
have yeah. Do I have the? I don't. Oh, you can go on my Flickr and find the last image.
All right,
if you
I'll make
want.
that happen.
The actual. So most people go out here and they take photos of the ducks on the top side. But me being also an underwater photographer, I wanted to get a photo of them, actually feeding down there, because they come in, they feed. A lot of these ducks, the scaup and the redhead, canvasbacks are divers, so they'll spend quite a bit of time underwater, and they're pretty good swimmers underwater. So the Choptank River can be pretty miserable in terms of visibility. It's pretty muddy, but I have a buddy that lives in the area, and he was giving me weekly updates on the clarity. And when I finally had good clarity one day, I went out there. I learned that clarity is based on tide. So the first time I went out there, I went on the wrong tide, and the light was wrong. So I got super muddy water. So I went back the next weekend when the tide was actually incoming and bringing in clean water, and I was able to get this image. I kind of sat in the water. It's probably 50-something degrees. I couldn't feel my
So
after 5 minutes. Yeah, even with the 7mm wetsuit. And I kind of just sat there and waited. And I waited for about 10 minutes until the ducks built up the courage to come and feed right in front of my face. And I was able to get this image. I actually had when they're feeding, they actually get so focused in that they don't realize you're there. So I actually had ducks that were feeding, and they would swim in between my camera and myself, and they would bump into me, and they'd realize, oh crap, what's this? And they would pop up right in front of my face and freak out and swim and scuttle on top of the waterway. But then they'd come right back.
That's crazy.
Because I was totally still. They didn't.
Yeah.
They were just a little surprised.
So that's definitely again, some planning right there.
Yeah, and thinking of how I wanted to get the composition, I wanted to shoot like multiple ducks kind of feeding. So I made sure I came out with my wide angle, thinking about composition, about light, about clarity, like water clarity. So, preparing for these shots is key. And, if I didn't, at least do a little bit of like work it took to find out when's the best water conditions, et cetera, I wouldn't have been able to pull out the shot.
Nice, man.
Yeah, and one of the neat things about this, and there are so many images posted every day on social media for any wildlife. There's literally a million images a day being put out there, and then you see something like this. Yeah, and you stop, and it just makes you think like, wow, there's still creative things that you can do. There's still really interesting things you can do, and this is the kind of image to me that wins. Whether it's a contest or you put it in front of people and it just gets a huge reaction because it's just so unique and so different. So really well, Santosh.
Yeah, thank you. And Pete, there's my friend Matt Peel who lives over in Cambridge that took this photo.
Yeah, that was great. Tosh, I think we got about time for one more. Is there one other image you had that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so can you do my black and white, the wildlife photographer of the year image?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that one. So this is the image that placed for me in both wildlife photographer of the year and underwater photographer of the year. It's
nice.
An image of schooling Galapagos sharks off the north shore of Oahu. So this actually, so in underwater photography for like any big megafauna, so like sharks, whales, manatees, et cetera, the classic image is, super ultra wide angle fisheye lens, getting the animal as close to the front element of the underwater housing as possible, like almost touching. So, your classic photos of sharks and whales, they'll be like looking at the camera, as close as you can get, to kind of fill the frame and show, like the beauty of these animals. So I went on this trip. It was a free diving trip. And I noticed that the first day I went on 3 separate occasions, and it took me 3 different trips over 3 weekends to get the shot. And the first time I went, I noticed that, these sharks were schooling about 30 meters below us, sometimes 40, 50 meters. And they were forming these beautiful, like circular, almost serpentine motions when they were schooling. And their schooling is really like hierarchical social schooling. So it's pretty cool if you read up on the social interactions of these sharks. So I realized that, I could get a cool image and I wouldn't have to be like right in the face of these animals. I could shoot top down, looking directly down on these sharks and get a cool image showcasing the motion of these animals. So I went back. I realized that, after I got out of the water that trip, I went back the second time and the visibility was like terrible. We had a big storm come in and it blew out a bunch of dirty brown water into the ocean. Couldn't get any good shots. I went back the third time and we had beautiful 150-foot visibility, and I was able to, free dive down to about 20 meters and position myself directly above a school of sharks and just wait for them to form like a really cool motion, or a shape as they kind of form these circles, and I was just shot away. And I converted it to black and white, and I love how this image turned out because you can see like different layers of steps of the sharks. You can see like the shark in the top left is closest, and there's sharks that are just fading into the black, and then of course the almost S shape of the motion of these sharks. I think it all came together for a really cool.
It really did.
Image.
Yeah, congrats on that image, and nice job with all the work that went into getting that and having the vision for that.
Yep.
All right, cool. So anything else you wanted to hit before I kind of do a wrap up and we move on to our last final thing?
Let's see. Maybe the other image of the snake, the one with the taillights, next one over.
Yeah,
that was real quick. So this one is more of like a photojournalistic image, and again, this is an image I had in mind. So like road mortality is a big issue with a lot of animals. Florida panthers specifically, their numbers are drastically reduced by being hit by cars, and reptiles are no different, especially snakes. They like to come out on warm summer nights and hang out on the roads because they're pretty warm, and unfortunately they become victims to passing cars. So I had an image in mind that I wanted to get that showcased the result of road mortality on animals, specifically snake. So I was in Florida and I found the image of I found this road-killed copper cottonmouth, which is a venomous pit viper found in South Florida and all the way up to like Southern Virginia. And I was able to, you know, I pulled off to the side of the road and I kind of did the same thing what I did with my previous snake image. I kind of hit it with my flashlight for the spotlight effect, and then I just waited for. So this is all one exposure. So I just waited for a car to come driving by, and I had it on like a 30-second exposure. So I clicked the camera, the shutter. The car drove past, and as it drove past, I just hit the snake with a brief hit of light from my flashlight, and it gave this spotlight effect. So again, you know, I had this image in mind, and I was able to come out and, you know, essentially replicate what I had in my
And it really
mind.
tells an impactful story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And response, Pete. Yeah, Pete. I've seen actually 2 Florida panthers in the wild. One was on this trip. One was on a separate trip. One was in Big Cypress, and the other one was actually in Everglades National Park.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yep.
All right, nice
Great
image,
stuff,
man.
Santosh.
Scott, you have anything before I hit a wrap up on this, and then we move on to the fun thing?
No, we had a couple other things. So just from a topic standpoint, we'll wrap up at the end. We do have some upcoming topics, and again, we'll talk about the YouTube. But yeah, I'm dying to try to do something with this thing that Santosh sent us.
All right, Craig. Awesome. So real quick, guys, I just want to give a quick overview. You know, plan ahead. That's kind of the key we're talking about here. So work with the weather, even when it's inclement. You know, just because bad weather came around on the day you were planning to go shoot doesn't mean you should maybe stay home. Use different apps in the internet to get to the right spot and have the right light. They can be very helpful. And keep trying. You know, don't give up. That's certainly a key point there. And make sure you bring the right gear with you to execute the exact shot you have in mind. And you know, keep in mind.
And,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry. And think about the composition too. Like you definitely, you know, think about your subject, think about your background, think about your foreground, and think about like what you want to convey, like what image, like what's the message you want to get across or the story you want to tell. And don't be afraid to experiment with like something new with like wide angle or like off-camera lighting or like flat with a flashlight or, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
Motion,
definitely.
So shutter speeds.
And I also wanted to mention, you know, keep in mind, it's not a bad thing at all to just wander around, to just go out and enjoy nature and bring a camera with you and see what you find. I still certainly do that occasionally, not near as much as I used to, because sometimes it's nice and it's freeing to just go out and enjoy and wander around and see what you see. But as far as photography goes, and when I really want to, you know, create a specific image or something different and unique, that's when planning really comes into play. And like Santosh said in the beginning, when you start to really think about these things and plan ahead, that's when you really notice a big step up in your photography and the consistency of it and being able to create the different images that you really want to share. All right, so now on to something a little fun. Scott, you want to share your screen? And I'll get us set up on split screen here. So we're going to do, we did this a while ago, we're going to do another edit off here. So Santosh was kind enough to send us this. What is this, Santosh? Can you?
So it's a siphonophore. It's a comb jellyfish. It's about an inch long, and it was taken while floating in over 900 feet of water, about 6 miles out in the Gulf Stream, in the middle of the night on a drift dive. It's called a blackwater dive. So you literally go out in the middle of the night into deep water. You jump into the pitch black, and they drop a weighted line that has a couple of lights on it, and it attracts, you know, all the microscopic and larvae and the jellyfish and the bait fish and stuff that migrate up from deep water to the surface at night to feed. And then so you just kind of swim around in the middle of nowhere in the pitch black, and you look for small little macro subjects to photograph. It's really hard. It's definitely the hardest photographic venture I've ever done, and I still frankly suck at it, but it's a lot of fun. And it's cool to be out there. Like, it's cool when you're out there, just turn off all your lights and it's just pitch black around you, and you're, you know, under the water and you can't see anything. It's kind of eerie, but it's pretty cool.
It's got to be wildly disorienting.
Oh yeah, it is. You need to, it's a drift dive, so you're not tethered to anything. You're drifting with the current, like, and when you're in the Gulf Stream, you're drifting at like a good, like, 3, 4, 5 knot clip sometimes. So like you definitely want to make sure you stay within like visual. Like you can keep an eye on your light line at all times so you don't lose it. And you know the boat is just doing circles around the light line all night long.
Okay.
And then when you're done, you come up to the surface, you shine your light at your boat, a red light, and then they come and pick you up.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool.
All right. All right. So Scott, how long you want to give ourselves here?
Santosh, why don't you be the timer? Let's do 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
All right. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Give us a 1 minute warning. And okay. I have a pretty long bucket list. I can promise you this is not on my bucket list.
All right.
So Tosh gave us this image. Scott and I are both going to edit it in our own way, and we're going to see what we come up with here. And we'd love to hear your feedback at the end. So, you ready to get started, Scott?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, get started right now.
All right, now.
Go.
Here we go.
Oh my God, this is a disaster.
I don't know what he's talking about. I'm kind of anxious to work on this one here. So, the key for me is
we already got a bet on Ray.
The key for me is to really going to kind of make this sucker stand out, and for me, that's going to be jacking some highlights and bringing the blacks way down. So I think this is a good starting point in Lightroom, and I'm going to hop into Photoshop. Scott's going neon over there. I can see that. That's impressive.
I'm playing around here.
Yeah, he's going for some color. So actually, and I'm definitely going to head that direction in a little bit. And
quit peeking at my screen.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a cheat,
right?
Right?
You're getting all my good ideas over here.
I can see his screen, yeah. So the first thing I want to do actually is just some cleanup here. I'm going to clean up a lot of this excess stuff. So I just made a quick layer. I'm going through with the spot healing brush, I think this is, and I'm just gonna get all this stuff. So
I don't know how to, that's my problem. I don't know how to clean all that stuff up quickly.
Yeah,
I don't know how much to leave in.
So
right.
I'm just doing this for a while. Scott, if you want to tell them what you're doing, because mine's kind of boring right now what I'm doing.
Well, I'm just going I wanted to try to make these blues pop. Keep in mind, we never looked at this image more than a couple seconds. So yeah. I'm just trying to make these blues stand out and make it look like I forgot to duplicate the layer. Just pro tip, anytime you're working from Photoshop, duplicate the layer first.
Yeah.
And then do what you want to do on top of it. So yeah, I'm getting rid of the whites, these big standout things. And I'm going to try to leave. It's too hard to clean up all the other stuff. So
I'm done cleaning up everything. What'd you say, Scott?
I'm trying to figure out how much of the stuff to leave in and how much to take out.
All right. So that one's going to let me go really black there. I'm just going to kind of go a little bit darker on the outside edge. Timer check there, Tosh?
We're at 2 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, my computer, because I'm streaming, is running like super slow too.
So we're already on to the equipment blaming. Gotcha. Okay.
Oh yeah, because you're running like top of the line Mac with 4K monitors. I'm over here running a computer from 1985.
Westinghouse.
Right. He has upgraded. No, the
monitor.
The Westinghouse is just a secondary monitor, I believe now.
That's a secondary monitor.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a new one?
He did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that shows how much I've been paying attention to our group chat.
He's dual screen right now, Santosh.
What?
He's dual screen, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Scott is moving up in the world.
That's surprising because Scott's always like, how do you use this? He's like an old fart when it comes to technology.
And you guys constantly remind me how old I am. Thank you.
Yeah. So right now I'm actually using a curves adjustment layer that is adding a little magenta. I'm just trying to enhance the colors that I see right there. I definitely already saturated the blues a bit, and I think I just want to go a little bit lighter with the top half here to kind of really make that stand out. So I'm going to push that up in this curve, but I'm going to also bring that black point back just a little bit so I don't kind of fog everything up too much, because I don't want to make the blacks go too gray in that area there. So I think I'm pretty much done. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this one a little bit early. So see, there's this one light spot there, so I'm actually just going to put a burn layer on that and just try to softly kind of clean that up. So yeah, I'm going to call that done.
Oh boy.
And we'll see what Scott does.
I don't know what the hell I ended up with.
We have a minute left.
Yeah, I'll call mine done. There's no way I'm going to clean up all the... I guess, Santosh, all of these little specks and everything, that's just stuff in the water, right? Just
Yeah,
sediment?
that's just, it's just backscatter. So when you shoot with strobes, you shoot with, you shoot with these 2 flashes or like 3 flashes sometimes underwater, and that's just all particulate that's between the subject and your lens. And, the strobes fire out a flash of light, and your light hits these particles and it bounces back, and you capture it as these spots.
And anything that's closer to you is going to be even lighter than your subject.
Yeah, and there's ways to like minimize it with how you angle your strobes, but like when sometimes there's just no way around it, and it just takes a little bit of editing to get all that crap out of there.
That's a good cleanup method there, Scott.
Yeah, I'm just burning everything except the light coming into it. So yeah, I guess I'll call that done.
All right, there we go.
It's not matte, so like so that's the hard thing about editing these Blackwater macro photos, are like kind of being able to get rid of the backscatter and also make the animal pop out. So it's something I'm still pretty new at and I'm not very good at, but definitely want to do more. Ray, if you want to just quickly Google Blackwater macro photography on like Google Images,
sure thing.
You can see some of the images. This is pretty much like the new craze in underwater photography.
Oh yeah.
Right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
oh wow.
These images are winning tons of competition. If you want to like show that on the screen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right. I got the other screen going. Hang on. Let's just hit. There we go.
Yeah. So if you show images, it's like people like photograph, little larval fish and like
wow.
Jellyfish and like cephalopods like octopus and squid.
That's very cool stuff. Yeah, lots of unique stuff there.
Yeah.
Nice.
If you go look at the octopus, that's like 6-7 across.
That one?
No, that's a larval crab.
Oh.
That's the little squid. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, like that neck. One back.
Oh, one back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy looking stuff. There's a lot of unique colors here.
Yep.
Yeah, really interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, mine doesn't look that good. I'm not gonna lie. Mine does not look that good.
I did manage to clean up all the spots on mine, so I think that.
How did you get rid of the spots, Ray?
So here, Scott, I'll share my screen so you can see that. So here was the start right out of Lightroom. So the first step I did was to just make a blank layer, and then I used let's see, it's called the spot healing brush. So the way that works when it's on its own layer is you don't have to sample anything. You just click. I'm just clicking here.
Yeah.
A single click just gets rid of anything. It tries to just basically remove what is there, and it tries to, like, if you had a texture back there or a color back there, it would sample from what's around it and try to remove it. So you basically just color over stuff you want to get rid of. It's real simple, real clean, easy. So I just went ahead and did that to clean up everything like that.
I just didn't know you had time to hit all of those. I use that a lot, but I didn't know you had time to do it for all of those little specs.
Well, I use that. The graphics tablet makes that really fast, so I was just literally scribbling over that, so it took me less than a minute to do everything.
I need to get a tablet for that. Yeah, because doing it on a mouse takes forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Really tough. So then I did a curves adjustment layer to make the blacks really black along the outside edge, just like you did, Scott. Kind of basically a burn on around the critter.
Yep, that's exactly what I did.
I did a saturation pump and a contrast pump, and then I did some selective color adjustments on the outside edges to have a little magenta there, another lightening adjustment, and then I just burned that one little spot up there.
Gotcha.
Santosh, there was a question from Joe. He said, have you seen anyone trying IR photography underwater? I would imagine coral would look pretty crazy.
Huh. So I haven't heard of underwater IR photography, but there is underwater fluorescent photography with like a fluoro light, like, a black light. And that really makes, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen like a marine, like a reef tank, but a lot of the ways to make the coral pop out, like those cool like neon greens and pinks is with a black light. And so like shooting with like fluorescent light with like a black light really makes that coral pop out. So I guess it's not really infrared, but it's similar.
Yeah.
You don't need a special like converted camera or anything. You just need pretty much a fluorescent light and like a filter.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yep. Unique stuff. That's awesome. All right, guys, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thanks, Scott, as always, and thank you, Santosh, for joining us today. This was a really good talk. I think we got a lot of good information out there, and the edit was really fun, so thanks for that unique image.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to the next time I'm back on.
Same here. All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.